thank everybody for taking the time to be here on this call today. And let me, in particular, we'll have the chance to introduce Robbie and Linda here in a moment, but I just want to express my deep appreciation to the 4 elected officials that are assembled here, focusing on some of the efforts that they have advanced in Southern California on the issue of homelessness. I think all of us will acknowledge before we came in to this pandemic, dealing with the challenges, not only of COVID, now a COVID-induced recession in the state of California. We had a crisis that we were navigating on the issue of homelessness. That crisis has not gone away. Our resolve, our commitment, our faith and devotion to the cause of getting people, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, 100,000+ people off the street remains. What we are doing differently, though, and fundamentally so, is we're moving now with a sense of real urgency and at deliberative speeds that we have not processed in the past. And what we are announcing today is an update on one of those initiatives, Project Home Key, that was approved and supported by the California legislature just a few months ago in our July budget, where we identified $600 million of federal support where we could provide for permanent relief, not just temporary relief, to address the needs of housing for homeless individuals up and down the state. Built off a program called Project Room Key that started just 6 months ago, remarkably, just 6 months ago in April, where we identified over 16,000 hotel rooms up and down the state that we secured. 22,000 people have been supported just in 6 months. 22,000 human beings have been supported by that program, and it has spawned similar programs and support all throughout the state, none more demonstrable scale than the ones in LA City, LA County. And that's why I'm very grateful to see the 3 representatives, 2 supervisors, and of course the mayor of Los Angeles represented, but more broadly, even throughout the Southern California region, Mayor Ventura was kind enough to join us here today. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I don't want to talk too much more, except just a quick update. We have now distributed, just since that budget was signed, $596 million. And we've distributed some $284 million in Southern California, with 8 regions that we defined in the state. One of those regions defined in this call, in this update here today. 33 projects, $284 million. Got that money out in just a number of weeks. Projects that have to be up and running by the end of the calendar year. Today, we're announcing $147 million throughout the state of California in 12 cities and counties, representing over 1,109 units. In fact, 1,109 units exactly that are part of these approved projects. We're also announcing today a philanthropic commitment that was made by Kaiser of $25 million and by Blue Shield an additional $20 million. That $45 million is now being sent over to Enterprise Community Partners that does this as well or better than any other organization of matching resources, providing grants, and providing supports so that we can provide for wraparound services for clients that are part of our Project Home Key effort. And so $600 million, an additional $45 million of philanthropy, desire here in the California legislature with our enthusiastic support to find additional dollars in this space, a need and desire to move at lightning speed to get more resolved, more serious about addressing this crisis of homelessness in our state, and 4 extraordinary leaders that have joined us here today that are getting it done at the local level in meaningful ways in record time. And so I want to, in no particular order, though, I think formally I do want to acknowledge our co-chair of our homeless advisory group for the state of California, Mark Ridley-Thomas, and ask Supervisor Mark Ridley-Thomas to talk briefly about some of the efforts in his county. By the way, in this latest announcement, and Supervisor Solis, your partnership in your county, this latest announcement are 6 projects between the city of LA proper and the county of LA. So 6 in the city, 2 in the county, total of 8 projects that are moving forward that you guys identified. You did all the work, you made happen, and I'm just the beneficiary of being able to make this announcement. And so I've talked way too much. I just wanted to tip my hat to you and Supervisor really, Thomas. Let me just thank you for everything you're doing, leading the charge, holding us to account, raising the bar, but now delivering on this promotion and these promises.
Thank you very much, Mr. Governor. And I simply want to say to my colleagues in Los Angeles and in Southern California generally, we have 2 clear examples of why we do what we do and why it's so important. And I make reference now to both Robbie and Linda. They make it all worth it. Mr. Governor, you've been extraordinary, and I want to make that clear to all who would but believe that this work has happened because of leadership. Leadership. Couldn't do it otherwise. The legislature has followed your lead in protecting lives, preserving the public health, moving beyond that to providing much needed income to communities, particularly small businesses, and trying to do all that we can to prevent the surge. We've been on the case. You've made reference to what's happened in terms of Project Room Key. And I want to say, without fear of contradiction, it's been extraordinary. There's no point in time where the region of Los Angeles has been able to do as much by way of housing of the homeless, the vulnerable, those who are elderly with underlying health conditions. Never before can that be documented, nor shall it ever be erased. And the fact that you didn't give up, but you kept leaning in and said it's Room Key today, but now we need to move to Home Key. Why? Because the intent all along was to do exactly what we're trying to do. Not put people back into the streets after the pandemic may have subsided, but in fact to find them permanent solutions that honor their dignity and worth as persons who call themselves Angelenos and beyond. And so I think, Mr. Governor, Mr. Mayors, and Madam Supervisor, we have a lot to celebrate. In Los Angeles, the new coronavirus response teams on the case, the surveillance testing, pushing it hard, the hotspot technology and apps, we are all there. And then we decompress in the environments where there's a concentration of those defined as homeless and congregate homeless, the shelters. We're doing that with PPE and more. We have a lot that we've done, and we know that there's much more to be done. Mr. Governor, the fact that you stood up a homeless advisory council prior to the pandemic suggests to me that you had vision and commitment. That work has to continue. The matter is more urgent and more profoundly challenging today than it was then. And I simply want to say on my own behalf and that of my colleagues, we're ready to weigh in with you. We're ready to double down. We have to do this work in the interest of those people who yet are homeless, and yet we have an obligation to address it in a way that dignifies their very being and indeed our own. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Supervisor. And before I turn it over to Madam Supervisor Solis, I'd love to turn it over to you, Mayor Garcetti, because you and I, we on 90% of our conversations that we have are on this topic, and I know how committed you are, and passionate you are, and how resolved you are to do more, and for all of us to do better, and all of us to be held to a higher level of accountability and expectation. But I want to thank you as well in recognizing the opportunity to leverage these strategies coming from the state, and to and demand that the state pony up, not just more rhetoric, but more resources, so that you can stretch your existing strategies and make them go farther. And I want to acknowledge that in this light, particularly with Room Key, because you came up with a local version well above and beyond what the state was calling for. You guys set your own audacious goals that were basically statewide goals just in your own city. So, Mayor Garcetti.
Thank you, Governor, and thanks for, it was one of the most exciting moments of my life to be able to go to Sacramento and hear your State of the State this year, where it was the first single topic State of the State I'd ever heard, let alone of any topic. It was exclusively about homelessness. And it showed who you have been. It revealed the soul that you have brought to this issue as a mayor. I always tell, when people said, how's the governor doing? I'm like, he was a former mayor. He's great. He gets it. He understands. Although Jerry Brown was technically a mayor, he would always say, yeah, you guys solve that stuff. And we love Jerry for being a tightwad, and we loved him for all his toughness. But you bring a heart to this issue that I want to acknowledge. Your rhetoric matches your resources. And, the unprecedented attention, the unprecedented resources, and the unprecedented speed you have brought really distinguishes the leadership you have brought to this issue. And thank you, Supervisor Ridley Thomas, for mentioning Linda and Robbie, who I also want to acknowledge. This is not about numbers. This isn't about rooms. This isn't about statistics. This is about stories. This is about the flesh and blood of the people who we hold, our own family members, our own neighbors. This is mothers and daughters and brothers and grandfathers, and it hits everybody. And Supervisor Solis and Ridley Thomas, you've been a part in Los Angeles of the best relationship between a city and county. I know when the governor's office usually gets a call from a mayor, it's often because they're like, my county's driving me crazy, or the county's calling saying my cities stink. In Los Angeles, we really are marching together in an unprecedented way. So in LA, we had that great news. For the city of LA, I'll give you that narrow perspective. We submitted 16 projects and got funding for 12. We always over apply, but 12 was more than I thought we would get. And we did match that with local dollars that we took from, as you did with one-time funds from this coronavirus relief fund. We matched that as well, because if we're not looking at coronavirus as something that is putting a light on the disparities in housing and health that already exist, we have a pandemic called homelessness that predates this pandemic. We've got a disproportionate deaths. And thank you, Supervisor Ridley Thomas, for mentioning what you and Supervisor Solis and we have done together. We're very proud, Governor, in Los Angeles of the health surge with unhoused Angelenos. You're less likely to have coronavirus, less likely to be positive, and less likely to die from it if you're unhoused than if you're housed right now. Those are statistics in LA. We're the first city in America to have cut the African-American deaths to under the population of African-Americans, percentage-wise, when it was double like in most other places. So we're really using that equity lens. And when you revealed that this week, we were all nervous, like where are we gonna come out on the equity lens? And LA came out soaring at the top, because we've, like you, put that into the DNA of our response on homelessness and our response. For instance, we had the first African-American homelessness report in the nation's history that said specific things where you can't take race out of this when race is in it, from the beginning, before somebody's homeless, and afterwards. You can't take sexual violence and sexuality and gender identity out of that when that is a big part. You can't take mental health out of it. So together, and you see Doug Guthrie on this call with our housing authority, we realize sometimes the most nimble bureaucracy is the pure bureaucracy, and the housing authority is one that exists a little bit outside of the formal part of the city of Los Angeles, but directly I have oversight of appointing the board, and they said, we'll step forward for the city to make these purchases. They're going to retain some of them, and other ones will be out there for the city. And we're looking at those other ones that we applied, those other 4. Maybe we can find funds so we can get 100% of those done. So thank you. We look forward in the future years. What was HEAP became HAP. What is HAP is now HAP plus the federal assistance. And I guess the only other thing I'd put out there in this conversation is shame on all of us if we let these folks go back on the street, which is why this is so brilliant. We're not going to get 100%. The press who's watching right now, when they say, well, you only get 50% of people out of a shelter into housing, that's an extraordinarily high statistic, by the way. Given folks who work in homelessness, you're lucky if you get 10, 15% sometimes. We're batting what would be certainly a batting crown if it was baseball of percentages, and well beyond that. So let's keep doing that and keep pressuring the federal government to not walk away from this, no matter which administration. And you and I both praised this administration when they stepped forward, and Secretary Carson stepped forward with some housing dollars that were very important on this. And whether it's a Trump administration or a Biden administration, this should be an American priority. Thanks.
Well stated. I appreciate it, Mayor. Thanks for everything you're doing on this, and we'll circle back around. We'll talk a little bit more. Supervisor Solis, who has, by the way, 2 or 3 of my staff members, full-time staff members for Supervisor Solis on many topics, but none more than the issue of homelessness and the big project I know you're advocating for in your district. And Jason Elliott, who's 6 feet and 5 inches away from me, is testament to your not just sincerity, your resolve, your commitment on these topics. And I want to just thank you and acknowledge all of your hard work, and thank you for participating in this and being so active in the search of identifying locations, identifying opportunities. Supervisor.
Thank you so much, Governor, and to all the elected officials, my colleagues, and to our recipients, Linda and Robbie and all the other elected officials. We couldn't have done this. When a leader makes something happen, they have a vision, and sometimes other people don't see what's beyond what's happening in the moment. And you have that ability to cut through that. And I can't tell you how important it was to be able to have the funding necessary so that we could bring our efforts on homelessness to fruition so quickly in a matter of a few weeks. Once the pandemic hit and you said we've got to shelter our homeless, and the way we're going to do it is through Roomkey and purchasing and taking over some hotels and motels. I have to tell you, it was a gift for us. And for me in my first district, I have to tell you, we had 9 projects set up right away. And it was tough, I want to say that. And you and I were going back and forth talking about how difficult it is sometimes to get other local cities beyond just the city of LA, but the local cities that we represent. I represent 24, and not all of them are clearly aware of how to embrace this and understand it. So it really took a lot of wear and tear to make sure that we could get it done. And I want to give a shout out to some of the cities that stepped up: El Monte, Monterey Park, Pomona, Rosemead, and of course the city of LA. And we were able to get 9 of those facilities done. Now we're looking at the transitioning into the home key, and one project that we're going to be opening up in a new city, Baldwin Park, because they got it. They understand that there's going to be help for the city, but there's also going to be this effort that we're collectively pulling our resources together using our own Measure H money, our mental health services. And I want to give a shout out to our departments, to the homeless initiative, to Department of Health Services, to mental health, and to public health, and to also all the stakeholders from LASA and all the providers that have come together to make it possible. It has been a really wonderful learning experience, but my hope is that we can get more of our local cities, the smaller ones, to think big and not be convinced that somehow they can't do it alone. We're there to help them, to be that safety net. And with this additional amount of money that's going to be coming in, I think that's really going to help to provide us the comfort that some of these cities are going to need to know that they can also help draw on. And, I love working with the city of LA. Mayor, you've been wonderful to work with. And we have some new projects that are going to be coming online right now, right in downtown. Hopefully 232 beds where a jail was going to be built. Okay, so we're really talking about some radical changes here that we're saying care first, jail last. Let's get treatment to people who really need it and build out more affordable housing, because right now people are hanging on with their life because they're afraid they're going to be evicted. We don't want to see more people falling into homelessness now. So we've got to work fast and quickly. And I want to thank your staff very much, Governor, for all that you've done, because I know it's been a lot of wear and tear, but you weathered it and you've done a good job. And now our next step is to make sure that we can get more people in to the permanent home key perspective and get more of those facilities up and going. So you got a partner in us, and we're ready to go. So God bless you, and thank all the staff and all the folks that are watching and hearing us today. And to those people that are testimony that this works, that people can get their lives together and have a new chapter, new hope, and bring unity to their lives, to their communities, and to their families, is something that we're all resolved in working towards. So thank you so much, Governor, and all of you.
I appreciate everything you said on the sentiment, and also appreciate, Supervisor, you making a point that there's still folks that are not as committed as all of those that are assembled here today, that don't see this, quote unquote, as their responsibility, but someone else's responsibility. And one of the things that I'm very proud of up here was the leadership of the Assembly and our State Senate Pro Tem Atkins, who was a huge champion of this program, the Assembly Speaker, that helped us also waive some of the permitting rules in order to find, well, a little bit more encouragement in terms of siting and location to make it a little, give us a greater chance of success. And there's some that are still in the way, that are still blocking those efforts. But one that's not is our Ventura mayor, who joined us. And Mayor, I just want to thank you for getting it done and being part of the solution, and not just sitting there moralizing and saying it's all, Mayor Garcetti's responsibility. That you and all of us have a role to play throughout the region and throughout the state. And Mayor, it's wonderful to have you on, and we wanted you on because you're doing it, and you're a leader and you're taking responsibility. And I just want to express that and thank you.
Thank you. I mean, you're right. This is all of our responsibility. And I want to thank you, Mr. Governor, for your leadership in making these programs a reality, because they have been a resounding success here in Ventura and Ventura County. And Mayor Garcetti hit on this, but really the key to the success here locally has been the strong partnerships between the city and the county. And so that when the state provided us this critical source of funding, we were able to utilize these existing partnerships and relationships and immediately jump into action. We were able to identify 4 sites in the county, 2 in the city of Ventura, where we could house homeless individuals. And really, it was these pre-existing partnerships and relationships between the city staff and county behavioral health, and largely, a lot of our faith-based community as well. That we had services in the field. We had doctors in the field providing much-needed medical care to these individuals where they resided. We had constant contact with behavioral health specialists. And so that when Project Room Key launched and became a reality, we knew which of our homeless individuals were most at risk, who was most vulnerable, who had pre-existing conditions. And we were able to quickly reach out to these individuals and provide them that critical information about this program. And because of the extensive outreach we'd already done, we had fostered and developed trust with these individuals, so that when we told them about this program, they trusted us to go into it. And it was really knowing who was most vulnerable and being able to get them into this program, get them the services they needed to continue receiving, and get them housed. The results speak for themselves here in Ventura County. We were able to serve over 400 of our most at-risk homeless individuals. Not a single one ever tested positive for COVID-19. And on top of that, we were able to transition 80 of those individuals successfully into permanent housing. And so it just shows that when there's this commitment community-wide to do this hard work, you can get the results you need. And with Project Home Key, we're going to be able to continue doing this important work. Project Room Key saved lives. Project Home Key is going to help us continue to save lives. And we're going to work with our housing authority and local affordable housing developers, and we're going to be able to get the projects we need to continue this successful transition from sheltering into permanent housing. So thank you, Mr. Governor.
No, I appreciate that. And I appreciate, and what a perfect segue and transition into the 2 stars of today's conversation, Linda and Robbie, who in the spirit, not only your frame of transition, but spirit that Mayor Garcetti brought to this, of putting a human face on this issue. It's not statistics. These are real lives, real journeys that all of us are on. And life can be challenging. There's setbacks. There's external, internal challenges we all face, and some more extreme than others. And